Well, good evening. My name is Val Walters. I'm with the Ryan Bartel Foundation, and I'm so happy that you're able to join us for another one of our parental panels. Today's topic is about creating a sense of belonging through service. And so, really trying to understand the benefits of service to mental health. So, we're really excited to be able to bring a different aspect of mental health to you today. We've got two great speakers, Eva Payne and Jill Weiss. I'm going to give them an opportunity to introduce themselves here in a minute. And we have our board member and licensed clinical social worker, Denisha Hamilton, who's going to be moderating the panel. For those of you who don't know or might be new to the foundation, we are a suicide prevention organization. We work really hard to try to build skills and resiliency with teens so that they can handle those inevitable moments of challenge in their lives. We do that through programs within Loudoun County Public Schools with the Source of the Strength program, and through our proprietary program, the Fortitude Team Workshops that we offer at the libraries, and then another proprietary program, the Fort, that we offer about once a month throughout Loudoun County, really giving teens an opportunity to come together, connect with like-minded teens, and learn skills that will help them navigate life, not just during teens, but as young adults. So without further ado, Denisha, I'm going to go ahead and have you introduce our panelists. Welcome, Denisha.
Thank you, Val. So as Val mentioned, my name is Denisha Hamilton, and I'm a licensed clinical social worker. I work predominantly with teenagers and young adults in Loudoun County. And now that we are virtual, I can serve the entire state. And I'm also credentialed in Maryland as of this point. So I'm excited to be able to moderate this panel, because I think being able to give back is something that we often think about with like our National Honor Society kids, or it's just something, or we think about it around Thanksgiving time. And I really think putting this focus on mental health and the act of kindness and service to others, and how that can be a benefit of to ourselves and to our teenagers, is a really awesome idea and thing that we don't talk about too often. Research has showed that gratitude is also a protective factor against negative emotions and experiences. It does help us to boost our self-esteem by being able to give to others and look at life through a different lens. So I would like for Jill, I'll pick on you first because you're next to me on my screen. If you can introduce yourself a little bit.
Sure, thanks. I'm Jill Weiss. I live in Leesburg. I've been here about 30 years. I have two children, a 19-year-old and a 23-year-old. I have spent my life pretty much working for nonprofit organizations. When I wasn't working for them, I was volunteering for them, like when I was raising my kids. Right now, I've worked in all different sorts of capacities for nonprofits. Right now, I'm working for an organization called Loudoun Youth, which runs several teen programs. And the one that I direct is called the Claude Moore Community Builders Program. And it's a 10-month program where we connect high school students with volunteer internships at nonprofits and government agencies. And I love my job, not only because I love being able to provide volunteers to amazing organizations, but also because I love seeing what the kids get out of volunteering, which I think a lot of them, sign up for different reasons and have no idea what they're going to get out of it at the end. And I think that's what we're going to talk about tonight. So thank you for inviting me here to be a panelist. And I hope that what I say is helpful to you and all your families tonight.
I'm sure it will be, Jill. Thank you. And Eva.
Hello. I want to first thank the foundation for having me, and for you parents for showing up. My name is Eva Payne. I live in Southern California, and I have 6 children. I have a 22-year-old girl and 5 boys. Let's see, 18, 16, 14, and twin 10-year-olds. So got my hands full and a bunch of dogs in the house. When I was 21, I started a nonprofit, a summer camp for kids impacted by HIV and AIDS, and have run that for the last 23 years, except COVID. Obviously, we're not doing camps. This summer, hopefully, God willing, we will have a session. Over the last 5 years in particular, I have been researching how to live a life in flow. I went through a divorce in 2015, and I just kept saying, I've lost my flow. I've lost my flow. because I knew what it felt like starting a nonprofit, which I was a broadcasting major and a theater major. So I knew nothing about starting a nonprofit. But when you really put your heart and soul into something and then the universe conspires to work with you and beautiful things happen, I thought, is this recreatable? Can anybody do this? And so I spent the last 5 years researching it. I've written 2 books about it. I have 2 podcasts as well. One is a personal development and one is called Ideas to Human Better, just how do we human better in the world? And now I coach women, and I also have a retreat, a healing retreat in Oregon for women. So I do, and I still run the nonprofit, hopefully. So that is what I do. And I'm very grateful to be here and share what I know about volunteering and gratitude through the work that I've done. So thank you very much for having me.
Well, thank you, Eva, for taking the time out of everything you just listed to be here with us.
My pleasure. I love stuff like this.
So Eva and Jill, I'd like to ask a little bit of a personal question to get us started. What have you noticed has been the thing with volunteering that really fosters a sense of belonging? What have you seen personally and with the youth that you work with?
I think for me personally, I can give an example. Like I started volunteering for the Loudoun Medical Reserve Corps a couple of years ago when COVID started. And I did it because I was home watching the news all the time, feeling helpless like the rest of us, feeling really isolated. And the Medical Reserve Corps said they needed medical and non-medical volunteers to help with the vaccination sites. And I thought, oh, I could get out of the house. I could feel like I'm making a difference. I could do something. And all that was true, and it was a great experience. What I didn't really expect that came out of it was this like incredible sense of camaraderie among the Medical Reserve Corps members. It's like this amazing group of people who all form a huge team, and there's thousands of members, and we're not all there at the same time at the vaccination center, but on any given day they needed over 100 volunteers, because on the busy days we were vaccinating 3,500 people a day. And even though I wasn't personally vaccinating people because I don't have a medical background, I was one of those people kind of sending people to the different vaccination tables or the registration tables. They let us know that every single person there was an important part of the team, and that without everyone doing their individual jobs, we couldn't accomplish the common goal that we were trying to work towards. So it was just this incredible kind of experience of working with amazing people that all wanted to help make a difference during this crazy period in all of our lives. And at the end, when the vaccination clinic closed, it was kind of bittersweet. We were all happy that we had gotten to this point in the pandemic that it wasn't needed anymore. But people were kind of sad too, especially the vaccinators who were there a lot more frequently than I was, because they were so used to being together and working together on this, and they weren't going to see each other nearly as often anymore. I made some good friends through the experience that I still keep in contact with, but it's just, it's not the same. But that sense of belonging was something that I didn't really anticipate. And now whenever I run across anyone and I find out that they've been a Medical Reserve Corps volunteer or that they've volunteered at the vaccination site, it's just like this immediate bond. I can't really explain it, but it's a community. And also volunteering there, we had all the people from outside, not the volunteers, but people coming to get vaccinated from the community. And it makes us feel more connected to those people as well, because we were doing a service for them. So for me personally, that's kind of my, how I can explain a sense of belonging to a community from volunteer work.
I love that, Jill. Thank you. Thank you. Eva?
A sense of belonging. I can tell you that for 10 years, our nonprofit was 100% volunteer based until we got large enough that I just needed help. I couldn't do it by myself out of my kitchen. And even still, all of the staff who come to the summer camp, they were all volunteers, mostly college students who felt just called to come and serve in some capacity. And what I found is that, one, for the kids there, for them to be able to come to a place where they could speak their truth. I mean, imagine being impacted by HIV, right? There's so much stigma around that. So being to come to a place where they can be away from their parents and they get to make choices on their own and they get to share their story in a loving and safe environment. It's just done tremendous amounts for them and their personal growth. So I've seen the impact of just being in a safe place where you can be authentically yourself. And I was talking to my son about this question. We had about 30 minutes in the car, and he's the 16-year-old, one of them. And he was talking about how for him, he actually, when he was 13 years old, one of the camps that we do here in Southern California is for kids with any health challenge, and it's all volunteer based as well. And I asked him that summer, I said, Braden, I really need you to lead one of the groups. And most of the kiddos at that camp were on the spectrum. And so I said, it's 15 minutes and it's a really quick activity, and it's something that I think you can really do. And he invited one of his friends to come, and his friend was going through depression and just really wasn't feeling connected to anything, and thought, I don't know, I guess, okay, I'll come. And he said, seeing Jack be able to be there, and even though he wasn't the one like leading the activity, for him to be able to show up authentically himself and be able to contribute in a way where he felt recognized and seen and appreciated helped him so much. And it was just 1 week, in the summer. It wasn't even like this huge, long project that he was involved in. And I saw that in our staff members as well. So these staff members would come thinking like, oh, I'm going to make this big impact. And for them to be able to just come and give so wholeheartedly to these kids, I think they were transformed way more than they ever anticipated. And even now, 20 years later, having run this camp for so long, I've seen where we've had campers who started out coming at 7 and 8 years old. They became my camp directors, and they're now, they're the ones leading the organization in a lot of ways. And talk about belonging. I've had people go get Camp Kindle tattoos, like they really feel like super connected to this organization and the mission. And it's because they're just so loved for just who they are. And one thing that I think is really important when you think about, and this is coming from me as a parent with 6 kids, like I really look at my kids as individuals. And I think, what is your talent? What is your gift? And how can I help cultivate that into the world? How can you go and make an impact in the world where you feel needed and appreciated and loved? So for example, today, Braden was showing me he's in theater now. And there was a girl who made a video and like of their whatever, like come audition for theater. And she just loved editing videos. And so she just made this cute little video and they put it on Instagram. And that's just a great example of a way that she volunteered in a really simple way, using her gifts and talents to be able to contribute. And they feel like she was appreciated, it got 81 likes or whatever it was. But that was a way for her to really express her gifts and talents in the world. That was a way of filling a need. And I always tell my staff members, if you see a need and you can fill it, do it. And if you can't see a need, go find a need that fuels you up. And you will find your tribe within that group, whether you're a parent looking for a way to connect, or you've got kiddos. Like, it's one thing to throw your kid in a soup kitchen and be like, hey, go volunteer. It's another thing to go like, what are you good at? Do you love cooking? Do you want to go and connect here? And they will find their tribe within those opportunities. And so really looking at your kids as individuals and finding like, what are their talents and gifts and interests, and then lining them up with a service opportunity where they can really contribute in a meaningful way. And that just fosters that sense of belonging and community.
I agree with so much of what you and Jill said. And I know for me, for volunteering just helps me feel like I'm doing something bigger than just me. I'm stepping outside of my world, outside of my comfort zone sometimes. But instead of just doing things that benefit me or my family or my job, it's like, this is something that just makes me feel like I've met someone else's need. I was of service to another human. And, this could just be a Denisha thing, but I like that piece. I like the, everything doesn't have to be about work. It doesn't have to be about income. It doesn't have to be about how does it specifically benefit me. And I think it shows us how small our world is, but how big it can be, that to step into another person's world or experience and just be there for them. You don't need experience. You don't need expertise. You just got to be your genuine self. And I think that's the piece that a lot of people kind of fear with volunteering. Like, oh, I can't do, what is the one where you build homes? Habitat for Humanity. Like, I don't know anything about building, but it really is so much more than that. And I think you both really spoke to that really well. So now I have a more difficult question, because as a foundation, we see a lot of teenagers that are really struggling with depression and anxiety. And I think you both hit on this really well, but I want to expand on it a little bit. So if I am a parent and my child is struggling with just getting out of bed or getting to school, how do I help them to have this sense of belonging? How do I help them to even understand that volunteering could open up a new world and a new sense of gratitude for them?
Do you want me to start? Or?
All you, Jill.
Okay.
I feel like I'm picking on you, Jill. I called you first every time.
It's all right. It's okay. It's only second. I think, it is a very difficult question. It is. And I'm not a therapist, Tanisha, you are. So if I overstep, please step in.
Later.
I can say, when you are, okay, let me preface it this way. It's difficult, obviously. I know from experience, because I've struggled with depression on and off throughout my life. And the most serious depression I had, I wasn't working. I didn't want to get out of bed. I didn't want to go out. I didn't want to talk to anyone. I didn't want to do anything, and tried a million different things and nothing worked. And my therapist eventually convinced me to start volunteering. And, volunteering was something that I used to enjoy doing. It was my passion before. But even that was hard for me to do, because that's what depression does. You lose interest in things that you used to enjoy doing. So it took a long time for him to convince me, but I finally started volunteering several years ago at Loudon Hunger Relief. And I just went in like once every other week. And, honestly, the first few times it was really hard to do it, because it is hard, and it is going to be hard to get your kids if they don't want to get out of bed and do anything. This does seem like a big ask. So what I'm doing is I'm trying to tell you kind of from my perspective, so maybe it would help you. Everybody's different, but all I can do is share my own experience, since I'm not a therapist. Getting up and going, like when you're signed up, you're committed to do something. There's a little bit more pressure on you to actually get up and do it than if you just try to convince yourself, yeah, I'm going to get up tomorrow and go food shopping, or I'm going to go to the gym. It's very easy to roll over and in bed and just not get up and do it. But if you know that someone's depending on you, it puts a little bit more pressure on you to do it. So for me, it got me out of the house for the first time in a really long time. It got me around other people, the other volunteers that were there. And I'll admit, the first few times that I was there, I was pretty quiet. I was not a happy person. I was not in a good mood, and I was kind of stressed, because there's a learning curve with any new volunteer activity, any job. And I think this is something that's really important to explain to kids, because they may not realize it, because some of them haven't worked before. So they may go there the first day and feel like totally clueless and full of anxiety. That is perfectly normal, and they need to know that. And so, like, the first few times I went, I didn't really know what I was supposed to be doing. So I wasn't having a lot of conversations with people. I was focused, trying not to stress out too much. But then after going a couple of times, I started talking to the other people, and it was this community of volunteers. And you need to, like, the kids need to realize, you can tell them this too, because it's always intimidating going in to an environment where you don't know anyone. But people who are volunteering tend to be more compassionate. They wouldn't be there if they weren't, because they're there to help other people. So, after going for a while, what I realized is that this group of people, they go in and they're packing bags of food, but they're sharing stories. They're talking about their kids. They're talking about their spouses, their jobs, anything, good things, bad things. It became not like a family, but just like this little group of friends all working together to do something good, but also supporting one another in the process. So as hard as it was for me to get started, just having a commitment, not too much of a commitment, it's just one time every other week in the beginning, it really helps. Now, does it cure your depression? No, but it's like one tool in a toolkit. And if it does anything, it distracts you for a while, takes you out of your head. Kind of like what Denisha was saying, that you stop focusing on yourself and you focus on just what you're doing, that you're helping other people. And I'll say also just, real quick, and then I'll stop and turn it over to Eva. During COVID, my son was getting a little bit depressed and feeling isolated, sleeping on the weekends all day, and told me he was starting to feel depressed. And I said, come with me. There weren't a lot of volunteer opportunities because of COVID. Nobody was taking new volunteers. But because he was part of my household, the volunteer coordinator said I could bring him with me to Loudon Hunger Relief. So he came, and he ended up coming for a year. He volunteered there. And it was the same in the beginning. He didn't enjoy it that much, but there were some other young people who he became friends with. He started playing video games with them at night. It turned out to be a great experience. And when I asked him a couple days ago, I said, tell me, like, before I go to this panel, how did you feel about it? You know, what did it do? And he said, honestly, when you woke me up on Saturday mornings, I was not happy. I did not want to get up and go. But when I got home, I knew that if I had stayed in bed at the end of the day, I wouldn't feel nearly as good as I did after volunteering for a couple of hours. So that's kind of my anecdotal experience about trying to get kids that are really depressed to get up and just get out and try something.
That's beautiful, Jill. Do you want me just to start? Okay. I love that. When you say get out, what I think about is getting into nature. I listened to a podcast, Bronnie Ware, she wrote 5 Regrets of the Dying, and she worked in hospice for many years. And at the end of this podcast, the host said, if you could, all your stuff was gone and you had to leave like one piece of advice, what would that be? And she said, when you don't know what to do, go out into nature. And when you feel lost, go out into nature. And when you feel really lost, double that time. And I think that's what makes summer camp so powerful. I mean, I would honestly recommend every parent send their child to summer camp if that is feasible. There's something about being in nature, being amongst peers, challenging yourself, pushing to the right of the edge of your comfort zone, seeing like I can do hard things, recognizing that you can do that is beautiful. But if you can't go to summer camp, just get out into nature, go take your kids for a walk or go outside and get fresh air. I mean, just those little kind of things first and foremost is what I would say. Secondly, how could your kids volunteer in your home if they're not ready to like get out into the world? Like what could they do around the house that you could really highlight for them, that you could really say, like, oh my gosh, Braden said to me, for example, today, Mom, it's one thing when you say, do the dishes. And it's another thing when I just take the initiative and I just do it. And then you recognize that I took the initiative and you say, oh my gosh, thank you so much, Braden, for doing the dishes. Like I didn't even have to ask. It's those little ways of recognizing your kids and the effort that they make. So if your kiddo gets out of bed and showers and you didn't have to drag them out, it's like, oh my gosh, I'm so proud of you. Way to go. Way to get out of bed, get yourself dressed, taking that shower. Like, why don't you go for a walk around the block? Go listen to your favorite music or get up on a phone with a friend and just go for a walk and have a talk with someone. I think those kind of small ways of recognizing their achievements can be really impactful. And then, of course, if there is an opportunity to volunteer in the community and it is aligned with who they are, I just think that's such a key thing. You can volunteer anywhere and find that community. And anytime you give back, you're going to feel great. But when you can really do it in a way and with something that really feels in alignment with your soul and your essence, with who you are, it just like doubles it. It's like you've just, added so much to the clock there for them. And then finally, just having and I think we're going to talk about gratitude, but having that practice of gratitude. When I was personally, like Jill was saying, when I was going through a really difficult time for me, I just thought like, I was running a volunteer organization. It was hard for me to even just want to like go and do that, put in the effort. And I just kept hearing people say, have a practice of gratitude, have a practice of gratitude. And I thought, oh my gosh, fine. Like I'll try it. So before I would go to bed or when I would wake up, I had a little journal by my bed and I would try to find 5 things in the day that I was grateful for. And if that was like, I took a shower, like I'm so grateful that I had the energy to do that. That made me feel really good about myself. If I was grateful that my kids were nice that day, or sometimes they'd be really big things that I'd be grateful for. And what happened with that is that turned into me then asking the kids before they got out of the car, what are you grateful for? And a lot of times it'd be like, I'm grateful for you. I'm grateful for the dog. I'm grateful for our home or whatever. But every once in a while, and then it started turning to every more than once in a while, they would genuinely say something they were super grateful for. Like, I'm really grateful for my friend Jack. I'm really grateful for him. He's a really cool guy. And so that they have this practice of like recognizing in their life what they're grateful for, which then turned into me putting a little whiteboard by my front door with expo pens. And on the top of it, I wrote, what are you grateful for? And every month I would have them, and it's still up right now. Like, what are you grateful for? And they would just walk by and they'd write things on there that they were just grateful for, whether it was our dogs or a trip or a friend or a sibling or whatever. They'd put this on the board and then I'd wipe it all off at the end of the month and we would start over again. So it's really just being able to recognize the small things. And that right there was able to then click my brain into finding more joy in life in general. And I could see that in my kids also. So that would be what I would say as far as that goes.
Again, I'm so grateful to be here tonight because I think that both of you are giving our parents some actual tools to take away from this. Because one of the things that I was going to say, as a therapist that deals with very angsty teens on a regular basis, I know that trying to motivate them to do anything can be very difficult. And so sometimes the answer to the question of how do I motivate them to go out and do these acts of service, sometimes we can't. Sometimes it is starting with those very small things. It is the neighbor next door could really use some help with taking their trash out. Do you think you could go help them with the trash? The lady down the street really could use a babysitter for a Friday night date. Can you help the person down the street? It's not always going to an organization or this big something that's going to test their anxiety or push them out of their depression comfort bubble. Sometimes it is just let's start with right here. Your brother broke his arm. Can we help him do his chores? Little things like that. And I think really patting them on the back for the things that you are seeing that they're doing. Like, that was really nice that you held the door open for that lady at the store today. It seems so small, but in the mind of a teenager, being recognized for the things that they're just naturally doing makes them want to do it more. Sometimes as parents, we tend to pick out the things that they're doing wrong. And that really just, that negative feedback doesn't motivate any of us to do anything, but pointing out the things that they're doing right makes them want to keep coming back to do more of that. And so if you're having a hard time getting them out the house, don't start right where you are. Another thing that I would say is make it a family activity. Like, granted, teenagers hate family activities, but sometimes taking the emphasis and the light off of them and making it this is what we're all doing together actually is more motivating. They will huff and puff and like that stupid mom and all of that stuff, but it really does. They like that sense of belonging to the family, and we are doing this together. We are accomplishing this together. And afterwards, we're going to go out for ice cream or we're going to our favorite restaurant. So rather than just making it, I need you to do this or I want you to do it, let's all do this together. I did want to talk a little bit more about gratitude. So how is gratitude practice a part of service? And Eva, you started talking about this a little bit, so I'll pick on you and start with you this time.
Yeah, I think when you start to really serve from your heart, like you really feel that sense of belonging, you really feel that connection to what it is that you're doing, you can't help but feel grateful. You're grateful that you have the opportunity to serve. You're grateful that you're seeing someone else benefit because you showed up, just because you were there, like, oh my gosh. I've seen several, and not to say this is like the best example, but I'm going to say it, but I've seen a lot of counselors, specifically, these are counselors that come from middle income, like pretty well off, whatever. And they come to volunteer and they're working with kids from low income families, really struggling, like where HIV is this much of their problem because they've got 100 other things going on. And talk about the gratitude in those young people just goes through the roof because they go, oh my gosh, like, look at, I have so much to be grateful for. I don't have to deal with any of the stuff. And then their brain starts going, how can I help more? What more can I do? How can I show up for them? And they want to become like more involved in those kiddos' lives. So I think that when you get out into the world and you start serving wholeheartedly, just gratitude is just the outcome. It's just what you start to feel, you start to sense. And when you can work practices in where you can like recognize that gratitude, like writing down every day what you're grateful for, even if it's just 1, 2, or 3 things, or having a board somewhere where you can recognize those things, I think that just really helps to switch your entire mindset. For me, and when I was in that depressed kind of state and just anxious, that's where I started. I just started with a practice of gratitude because that just seemed like the easiest thing. How can I write down just 5 things I'm grateful for? And sometimes that was hard. Like sometimes I wrote down 3 and I was like, I'm just grateful I found 3 things, and just being grateful for your, even just your life, being grateful that we have this existence, being grateful for the tough times. Like if we don't know the difficulty, we're not going to know the joy. I talk about this a lot when I write about flow. Everyone wants our lives to be, happy all the time and things great all the time. Well, if it was great all the time and beautiful all the time, you wouldn't even know it anymore because you have nothing to compare it to. So the challenges, you can be grateful for the challenges in your life. I know as a parent, you might think, how do I be grateful for a son or a daughter who's in this really difficult place? And it's like, here's an opportunity for you to really decide for yourself. What can you learn from this? How can this help you grow as a parent? How can you love them and show up for them even more? How can you be grateful for yourself and give yourself grace and forgiveness, and not blame yourself for where your kiddo's at? We are all on our own journey, and having 6 kids, I can tell you, they are all in very, very different human beings. So what one kid's needs is so different than another. And really just being like, grateful that I have all these different kids and I can see that perspective, and having served hundreds and hundreds of kids, I can just see we're all such unique individuals. And so just really believing that even just every moment, being grateful for every single moment you have, and knowing that every moment is here to help you grow or learn or evolve, and having that perspective versus the woe is me, this is hard. Being a parent is hard. Yes, it is hard, but it's also beautiful and it's challenging and it's wonderful and it's all those things. And so when you can really work from a mindset of gratitude, like instead of thinking of it from the negative and going, okay, well, what can I be grateful for? What can I learn in this opportunity? And trying to look for that, even if it's just the littlest, tiniest thing. From that, it's like planting the seed and it can just grow from there. So I think everything starts with gratitude. And honestly, like even if it's so hard to dig down deep and find what you're grateful for, even if you can just find the smallest thing, just the breath in your lungs at this moment, having this organization that supports you, being grateful for that, knowing that there are so many resources out there for you and your kiddos, like being grateful for that. And then from there, just allowing that seed to grow and trusting the process of life and its journey. That's all I have to say about that.
Well, I'm glad Eva spoke first. I don't have a whiteboard. Maybe I should get one.
It's really good.
I'm sure it is. I mean, in all honesty, like I don't practice gratitude on a daily basis. It's just not who I am. I'm not knocking it. I know it's great and it works for a lot of people. It's just, in all honesty, it's not something that I do. But when I think about service and volunteerism related to gratitude, I can say that definitely whenever I volunteer, I feel grateful for the opportunity to make a difference in somebody else's life. And I'm grateful that there are so many opportunities out there where we can engage in those kinds of activities. I also feel grateful that I have, the time and the ability to do it. I can say, speaking for like some of the kids that I've worked with, I've spoken to some teens after their volunteer work about their experiences, and they are so appreciative of the opportunities that they had to make differences in other people's lives. Like I had this one girl, a teenager that I was talking to recently, and she told me that she was a virtual tutor for another girl who was taking a geometry class, and she was really struggling. And the girl had failed the last 3 tests. And she worked with her online for a week and tutored her. And then she was in school, and the girl who she had been tutoring sent her a picture, a text. It was a picture of the exam that she got back, and it was a 92 out of 100. And the girl that was the tutor, my volunteer, she was so happy, not only because the girl she had been helping was so happy and had done so well, but because she could share in the joy of that. and feel good knowing that she was a part of that. So, hearing teens say that, I know that they feel the same way that we as adults do when we make impacts in other people's lives. They feel appreciative and grateful for the opportunity. I've heard similar things from kids that have volunteered with like the Special Olympics, knowing that they can help other kids and grateful for the different perspective that they get from volunteering. So I had this one kid who was very active in sports activities, very competitive. And he said what he learned out of the program was just how to have fun and to be less competitive and enjoy sports, because that's what Special Olympics sports are about. So he really learned something, and he was grateful for the volunteer opportunity because of what it taught him, not just because he was able to help somebody else. So that's what I have in gratitude.
So I actually, as I was listening to you guys, I Googled the definition of gratitude, because we're throwing out this word, but I wanted to make sure that we were all sort of on the same page about what that means. And I'm going to get real nerdy for you guys, but I promise I'm going to bring it back around. So the definition of gratitude is the quality of being thankful or readiness to show appreciation for and to return kindness. And the return kindness piece really stuck with me when I think about teenagers who are depressed or anxious. They are willing to take care of their friends and their family in a way that they're not willing to take care of themselves. And I think that exists for most people that are struggling with anxiety, depression, any of that. And I think really honing in on that piece, the returning kindness to others, the being stepping out of yourself, that naturally just brings something. So when we're throwing out gratitude, I just wanted to make sure that we were all sort of talking from the same mind frame, because it's not necessarily saying, I think saying I'm thankful for this is awesome. It's a tool that I give teenagers every single day. Like if we can just change our mind to look at what's going right instead of always what's not going right, it just naturally does something for us. But being able to really just think about you and how we can use our vessel to be a light in someone else's life is really something that I think we don't talk about enough, or even acknowledge how that can help us and others. So another hard question from a parent perspective. So let's say I have a teenager, they're struggling with depression and anxiety. And I've tried a gazillion other things. I've taken them to therapy. I've tried meds. I just feel like I'm at the end of my rope. How do I know that participating in service will help my teen if it seems like nothing else really helped? Do you guys want me to start that one?
I can start, and I can start. I'm sure you have way more to add. Obviously, there's no one size fits all kind of approach. Like I said before, it's just volunteering is one tool and a big toolkit of other things that could possibly help. And there's never any guarantee. But I will say that based on kind of feedback I get at the end of my program, and not all the kids in my program, it's not a program for, specifically for kids that are depressed, but, a lot of them do have anxiety about things. I send them a survey at the end of the program and ask them a whole bunch of questions, including the impact that the program had on them. And I will say almost all of them said that volunteering increased their confidence. It increased their comfort trying new things, kind of stepping out of their comfort zones. It increased their confidence in communicating with peers and with adults, because a lot of kids don't really talk to many adults outside of their families or outside of schools. So, when they're in a volunteer type environment, like at a nonprofit organization or something, they have adults that are supervisors. They're often young, but these are the first kind of professional type interactions that they have. And a lot of them are really nervous at the beginning when they start doing it. And by the end of their volunteer experience, they say they are much more comfortable talking to adults that they don't know. And they feel like they have developed relationships, like we were talking about before, a sense of community and belonging, people that they trust, not just other teens, but other adults too, which I think is really important. So their social skills improve. A lot of them, they all say they have a sense of achievement that they didn't have before. So there's no guarantee that it will work for everyone, but I think that all of these things that the kids say volunteering does for them are all, and Denise and Val, you guys will have the language better than I will, but these are all kind of like factors that help improve your mental health. Like, they may not recognize the fact that volunteering improve their mental health, but when you nail down those individual questions, did it help your confidence? Did it help you feel like you have the ability to make a positive impact in your community? Like, almost all of them said yes. So, if your child's therapist thinks it would be a good idea, and there are just so many opportunities out there and ways, and we can talk about different resources for finding volunteer opportunities later, but I'd say there's no guarantee anything will work, but unless there's a real downside to it, which your therapist would obviously tell you, why not try?
Hey, Tanisha, can I just ask a quick question? I just took a look at the registration list, and I just took a peek at where everybody is from. Obviously, the majority of folks are from Loudoun County. So, Jill, could you just indulge us for just a minute and talk a little bit about the Clodmore Community Builders and a little bit about the program? I know it's an amazing program, and we at the foundation are happy to partner with you, but some of these parents might be interested in the program for their teens.
Okay, sure. Okay, first let me preface it by saying that it is a 10-month program. It's a big commitment, and this next year's program, the application deadline is in 2 days. So this isn't really an ideal time for me to be promoting the program, but I'll tell you about it. It's it has 3 components. So the first component is that each participant in the program is connected with a nonprofit or agency where they do a volunteer internship. They do about 50 hours over the course of a 10-month period. The second component is that they have to do about 30 hours of service with the other teens in the program. So if an organization is having a big fundraiser or event and they need a group of volunteers, I'll send out something for them to sign up for those events. And then the third component is we have them attend about 20 hours of professional development training, communication skills. We do sources of strength training. We bring in Ryan Bartel Foundation for that, leadership skills, things like that. It is a big commitment. So, for someone like, if your child is really depressed, I would say that this particular program is probably too much pressure to put on right away. Like, if they haven't done any volunteer work before, there are tons of ways that you can start slowly without making a commitment to do 100 hours in a 10-month period, which might just seem like an additional burden on top of whatever other stresses they're having. If they're at a point where you think this program would be good for them, there's 2 days left to get the application in. So it might be something that you'd want to consider for next year, or if you can get the application and recommendation in, reach out to me, let me know. But there are, my advice for people really, if they're just starting to get into this, would be to take it slower, with a slower kind of commitment. But Denisha, I'm curious to hear your perspective on that.
I do think, I think it really depends on where your teen is. So if they are heavily, I did not even know that existed, Jill, and I've lived in Loudoun County for a very long time. So I love hearing that that's a resource, because I will say, and then I will get back to the question, but I do think there are so many opportunities, but we don't, as a parent, we don't know where to find them. And so I really like that as a foundation, we have these parent panels, because I think it just lets people know that these things even exist in our community. Sometimes I think it really depends on who your teen is, that sometimes starting big is, we're making this 10-month commitment, and that is actually more motivating. I know when I've done group therapy sessions and kids are like, oh, I don't want to do group, that sounds stupid, I will have them commit for 3 or 4 rather than just 1. After 1, they may not like it the first time. It's weird, it's uncomfortable, it's new. So they may find reasons not to want to do it. But if I have them commit to 3 or 4, it's a very different something. By 3 or 4, you're probably in a different place. But I really do like that. I like the commitment. I like how well you laid out what the expectation for the teenager is, because I also think that sometimes teenagers are confused or don't really know what their role is. So if I volunteer, what am I supposed to do? Like, do I just stand there? Is there a boss? Is someone going to tell me what to do? So I like all of those components.
Great.
And I think the other question was the if nothing else has worked, right? Is that where we were? Val, you threw me off for the night.
Yeah.
Yes.
Sorry.
No, it's good. That was very good. But Eva, I wanted to give you a chance to also answer, like, if it feels like nothing else has worked, how do we know that volunteering should even be part of our kids' toolbox?
I guess you don't know until you try it, as Jill said, right? Like, I mean, as a parent, I would try anything. I have a friend, just a side note, I don't know what the laws are out there, but her son really struggles with depression. And I just created a post around psychedelics and the benefits of that. And for adults, because I've been working with that with adults. And she messaged me and she said, my son just started ketamine treatments and I'm seeing already like the next day, So I think like to the point of try it. If someone says service works, give it a try. When I was going through the hardest parts, I just told my therapist, can you just give me a list of like self-help things? Like just give me what's the list? I will go down every single one. I don't care how woo-woo it sounds. I'm willing to try it. And if it works, great. If it doesn't, ditch it, but give it a try. And it doesn't have to be some big, huge commitment. It could be little. My partner now, he loves dogs more than he loves humans. So for him, volunteering at the local animal shelter, he just gets so much joy out of connecting with an animal. There's a lot of like equine therapy or working with animals. It's super therapeutic. So maybe if they're like really having a lot of anxiety around people and whatnot, maybe try going down a route where they get to do something that isn't so connected to people. And that also something that you had said is, I think it's important if the parent's the one doing the research and trying to, propose something to my kid, I'm going to find out if that organization is actually set up to support young people. Because some people be like, oh yeah, just come volunteer. And they're looking for people who can take initiative. And if that teen is standing around and doesn't find the value in it, you may not get them to volunteer again. They may think like, well, that didn't work. And instead, it would work, but the organization couldn't support the teen. They weren't really geared to that. So I think finding like, what is your volunteer opportunity and really coming to your kiddo with as much information. Look, here's the program. You get to work with dogs. It's 1 day a week. It's 2 hours, that you're going to go and you're going to do this thing and let's just go and try it. David R. Hawkins, who wrote a book, Power versus Force, and he said everything tips at courage. There's all the negative emotions down below, shame, guilt, blame, all of that. And then once you do something courageous, something happens inside of you and you tip up into these positive ways, this mindset that's more positive. For me, when I was going through that hard part, I hiked the Grand Canyon. I hate hiking. I was not good at it. But I had a friend who was offering this women's retreat. And she's like, will you come and hike the Grand Canyon? And my intuition said, yeah, go do it. And I had so much anxiety before we walked down. I was throwing up. I'd never got anxious like that ever in my life. And by the end of it, I thought, oh my gosh, if I can do that, I can do anything. I can get through this divorce. I can get through this hard thing. So what opportunities could you create for your children where they feel courageous and that they can go, oh my gosh, I did that hard thing. So whether it's volunteering somewhere or whether it's, joining the local climbing wall and starting to just do something like that or a physical fitness challenge, maybe they want to run a half marathon, or volunteer for the local 5K run or something like that, like doing something where they get to step out. It's not about pushing people so far outside of your comfort zone. Sometimes if you go way too far, you retract back in even further. It's really about riding your comfort zone. And when you can do that and you realize, oh my gosh, I can do this, your comfort zone expands. And then you push a little bit further to that border. And then it expands again, and it expands again. And all of a sudden you look back and you think, wow, I have come so far. And so I think it works for adults just like it would work for kids. So find opportunities where they can be courageous. 2 other small points. Are they working with peers? There's something about peer to peer. If it is a kiddo with a whole bunch of adults, sure, there's benefits there. But if they can be around peers who are authentically showing up as themselves and your kiddo can authentically show up as themselves, there's going to be growth there. And is there opportunities to experience awe? I think when we experience awe and wonder, whether that's watching a documentary that you're like, that guy just climbed El Capitan with his bare hands, it just shows you the potential of what humans can do. And whether, I mean, I would never in a million years even try any sort of climbing without ropes. But the fact that humans can do amazing things creates this sense of hope inside of you. And sometimes that's all you need, is that little bit of spark of hope or light, that it's possible to feel good again. And that's possible to have joy in your life. So just really like, hey, if the opportunity comes its way and it presents itself to you, for you or your kiddo, say yes, because what, if it doesn't work, it doesn't work, but at least you tried.
Can I just piggyback on something that Eva said real quick? I totally agree. Like if you're looking for volunteer opportunities, you definitely want to find one that will be supportive of your teen. And it's hard to do that. But because of my job, I've contacted a zillion nonprofits in the past few years. So what I did today is I put together a list that Val's going to send out after this of a whole bunch of different local nonprofits that do take teens as volunteers. And one in particular that I want to highlight is called Mobile Hope. And that organization actually, they started out, they still do, but they do a lot more. They started out to help homeless teens. Now they do a lot more things. They do a lot of collections of clothing and food and diapers and all that kind of stuff. And they go out into the community and they distribute things. But they have lots of needs for volunteers to come in. They have a lot of teens that come in and work together, and they try to make it like a family. Like I was talking to them this morning and they said, like, for their volunteers that were there, they were going to all have lunch together. They're making hot dogs or hamburgers. They really support one another, and the clients of their organization volunteer as well. And they work with the volunteers, and nobody knows who's a client and who's a volunteer. They're very aware of kind of the different needs. They work with a lot of people with different kinds of disabilities, and they are accommodating, and they want to be able to support people and find ways to include them in ways that'll feel comfortable. So if you have a teen who has a lot of anxiety and they don't want to go volunteer somewhere on their own without knowing what it's like, they'd be willing to meet with your teen and show them around, give them an idea of what they might be doing before things are a little bit more hectic with more people around. And they also have opportunities where families could volunteer with the teen, like we were saying, for the first few times, just so they get an idea of what it is. And then they might see that hey, there are other teens here on their own. And then once they are comfortable doing it, they might be more comfortable doing it on their own. So, Val will send out that list to you. It's a whole bunch of different organizations that use teens as volunteers. And yeah, that's what I wanted to say. Sorry, I'm talking so fast, but I know we're running out of time, so I wanted to get that out.
I was thinking the same thing. I was like, oh, it's 7:58. I feel like I could talk to you guys about this for a very, very long time. Val just put a survey in the chat. If you can take a few minutes to complete that survey, it really helps the foundation to improve our programs and know how to tailor them to meet the needs of the parents in our community. I 100% agree with what Jill and Eva said, that trying something is always better than trying nothing. And there is no one size fits all. There's no magic something that's going to help our kids with their depression or their anxiety. But it makes me think of that definition of insanity, doing the same thing and expecting different results. Sometimes just trying it, and if no one's going to get hurt, what's the worst that happened? You're able to check it off your list. I want to be mindful of our time. So I want to ask our panelists if you have any final words for our parents before we get ready to wrap up. And parents, if you have any questions or comments, feel free to ask.
I'll just say two thoughts that pop in. The survey, like no one likes filling out surveys, but that is an act of volunteering, right? Like foundations need data. Like how do they get funding? Someone who's run a foundation or nonprofit for 20 years, like the data matters. So, for you to take 5 minutes and go fill out a survey, like that's a volunteer act, and that helps the organization. So please do it. And then the other thing, and I don't know if this is the best policy, but honestly, like I have my daughter, she really thrives off reward systems. So if I were to tell my daughter, if you don't get this, thing. If you don't get an A in whatever, I don't really care about grades, but that's a different topic. But then, I'm going to take this away from you. Some kids thrive with those threats, but many children thrive with rewards. So if you have an opportunity for your kiddo to volunteer and you're like, I'll pay you $20 to go volunteer, or like, I'll buy you that backpack that you wanted, or you can talk an extra hour to your friend tonight. You could stay up an hour later. I don't know what it is that motivates your kiddos, but if you know what motivates them and you can kind of bribe them with that a little bit, just to get them to try the new thing, then if it works, and hopefully it will, then you won't have to do that anymore. But sometimes just going to that point, sometimes they just need that like positive reinforcement thing, or that reward to get them to kind of jumpstart on that. And you know what? At the end of the day, we are all doing the best we can with what we know and what we have. I took a parenting class when my daughter was 18 months old, because I wanted to be a good parent. And these were all parents who were court ordered to go. And my stepmom was teaching it. And these were all parents who, had older kids or whatever. And here I am with a kid that I was just trying to get to not crawl out of the crib, at 18 months or whatever. And the thing that she said to me that always stuck with me is, your parents, meaning your parents all out there and us, right, as parents, we are doing the best we can with what we have and with what we know. So offer yourself grace and love in this journey of being a parent. Believe that you are doing the best that you can, because you are. The fact that you are here, I want to honor you because you care enough to show up to an organization's call at, whatever time it's 5 o'clock here in California, so it's later there, but that says a lot about you as a parent. So thank you so much for caring about your kiddos enough to show up for something like this and looking for resources for them. And that love will go a long, long way. Like the kids just want to know that they're loved, they're seen, they're recognized, that they can find those peers, they can find those connections. We all want to belong to a tribe. We all want to be seen. We all want to add value and meaning in this world. And if you can just do that in little ways for your kids and for yourself, self-care. If you are not taking care of yourself, how are you going to take care of your kiddos? So your self-care matters as well. How you show up in the world, how you respond to them matters. And give yourself that grace that you are doing the best you can with whatever situation that you have right now, and honor yourself and love yourself. So thank you so much for having me. And I'm happy to answer any questions if anyone has any.
Thank you very much for that, Eva, because that's something I say quite often, that we have to take care of ourselves and be kind to ourselves. Parenting is not easy by any means. If it were, we'd all be phenomenal at it. So, we're all growing together, we're all learning together, and whatever challenges are on your lap, I feel confident that you just being here at 8 o'clock at night on a Thursday with us is you doing the best that you can. Jill, final word.
Thanks. I want to clarify something that I said about my program, because I don't want it in any way to seem like I'm discouraging people from applying. Because let me just tell you a little bit more about my background. Before taking this job, I'm an attorney. I'm still an attorney, but I'm not practicing anymore. But I was representing families that have kids with disabilities. So I was doing special education law, helping them get accommodations and services in schools. So that's something that is close to my heart and always will be. And when I started in this job, one of the things that I wanted to do was to make my program more inclusive. Like, I can't turn it into a program specifically for people with disabilities, because that's not the mission of the organization. But what I did do is I changed some of the application requirements. Like, the first thing I did was I got rid of the transcript requirement, because to me, I don't care if you're a straight A student or not. That doesn't reflect on whether or not you could be a good volunteer. And I tend to think that your typical high achieving kids that are going straight on to college might not benefit from this program nearly as much as kids that are going on a different route, who really need the experience out in the real world, who need to develop their confidence and their ability to talk to peers, whether it be future employers or, wherever they're going after school. I want those kids to have a place in this program too. So, I had some kids in the program last year, one very high functioning student with autism, a lot of social anxiety, and I had some other kids with various disabilities, physical and mental, emotional, intellectual. I will try my best to find placements that are accommodating and that will meet them where they're at. And I have a couple of really great organizations that are willing to do that. Like I said, I can't change the entire program because it's just, I'm not the executive director, but that's where my heart is at, and I understand those needs. So, when I said about the pressure, certainly if you're, I was thinking more of, like when I was in my really bad depression state. But if you're in a different point, and everyone's in a different point, I have no idea what state your kids are in. Like Denisha said, if a 10-month program is something that might be good for your kids, I wish the application deadline wasn't in 2 days because it is a long application and it does require a recommendation. It's something to think about for next year if getting the application done and everything is too much pressure, because that is a lot of pressure in 2 days. But obviously,
Can I ask a quick question? Is the deadline for that always April?
Yeah, it's always sometimes in April, because the program runs from, it's a 10-month program that runs from June to March.
Okay.
So, and Loudon Youth is the organization. You can follow us online. I'm going to put the website in the chat and the name of the program, because I didn't even put it on the resources list, which was kind of silly. And I apologize for that. But yeah, there's so many opportunities. And I totally agree with what Denisha said about commitment being helpful, because like I said, even in my own experience and with my son, the first few times there is that learning curve and you're probably not going to enjoy it. So if you are going to try to get your kids to volunteer somewhere, I would suggest exactly what Denisha said, try to get them to like commit to doing something for at least 4 times or something. Give it a shot. If that doesn't work out, there's tons of other volunteer organizations if you want to try something different, but to stick with it for at least a few times, because everyone's nervous the first few times. So I'll stop talking now because I could talk forever too, but it is late.
No, that was great. You ladies were absolutely fantastic. Val, I think you have some last words for us.
Other than thank you to Eva and Jill and Denisha, thank you so much for being here. Again, I will send out an email with lots of resources, and Eva, I'll get some information for how teens might be able to volunteer with your camp as well. So we'll make sure to include that. I do want to talk about our May panel. It's going to be another unique panel. The title is Teens Talk. What your teen isn't telling you, and the entire group of panelists are teens. So I believe you're moderating again, Denisha.
I am.
And so we're going to be hearing directly from teens. Some of these teens have struggles, and they'll be telling us how best to parent them. So from a parent perspective, it'll be kind of looking behind the curtain at your teens' lives, things that your kids may not necessarily be telling you, these kids are willing to sort of share. So a super exciting panel. It's on our website. You can register for it now. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention that we are also a volunteer organization. So if you or your teen is interested in volunteering, you can go onto our website, and we do have some volunteer opportunities. And we also have a student advisory board that is we totally believe in the peer aspect and have a real buy-in in the benefits of things that are peer-led. So we do have a student advisory board, which we navigate with all of our teen programs. And we also have them attend our programs and give us the real feedback, not just the survey feedback. So they write up some great write-ups, and we've learned quite a bit from that interaction. So it is way past 8 o'clock now, almost 8:10. So I just want to say thank you to our panelists, to Eva and to Jill. Denisha, thank you for moderating. If you, again, just get a chance to complete that survey, we'd really appreciate that. And we have no further questions. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording, and we will see you all next month.
Have a great